Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is British singer-songwriter Louisa Rose Allen, also known as Foxes. Foxes has just released her third album called The Kick. It's her first full-length record in 6 years, but she hasn't been sitting around doing nothing. She took time away from performing and releasing music to take stock of her career and find a new team and label. The period leading up to that hiatus had been a non-stop whirlwind of activity that kicked off when Foxes featured on Zed's gigantic 2012 hit Clarity. From there, she released 2 well-received albums and collaborated with artists like Fall Out Boy and Rudimental, all the while touring the world with artists like Pharrell and Coldplay and as a headliner in her own right. But somewhere along the way, Foxes felt like she was losing the core of who she was as an artist, so she decided to stop and take time to reevaluate. We talk about that journey in this interview, as well as Foxes' upbringing in the UK, her path into music, and much more. But we started by talking about her new album, The Kick. Is it true that the album was written and recorded over Zoom?
Yes. I mean, I would say, 80% of it was written and recorded. And then we ended up in that kind of this tiny gap of there not being a pandemic, ended up being able to jump in the studio and just finishing up some mixing and things like that. So, but yeah, the majority of it was voice notes, me making a little studio up and then back and forth on Zoom, which is quite wild. I don't think I ever thought that I would make a Zoom album.
Yeah.
But, it's weird.
How did you find the experience? Because presumably, if you're in the studio, you're quite hands-on with everything.
Yeah.
But is there an element of being removed from the process, or are you still able to be as in control?
Well, it was a strange one. When we first went into lockdown, I was like, no way, I'm not doing Zoom. It's all about being in the room with someone and, connection. And that's how you create. And that's how I would always create music, because it's about the energy of the room. But I think what happened was luckily I found a really great producer that I loved working with. We'd had one studio in real life session before, and then lockdown hit. And so we knew we'd got on, we knew that we could write music together, and I loved his work and he loved mine. So I think it took me a few months to sort of give in and be like, oh, okay, I'll just try Zoom and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because I was very reluctant and I was being a bit, I was like rebellious, and I was like, that's not how you write music. It's, that's just ridiculous. I'm not doing that. So we tried a Zoom, and in that one Zoom, we couldn't get off Zoom.
Right.
So as much as I don't really like Zoom when it's for meetings, there was just something quite amazing about it, because I was doing lockdown, half alone. So there was something quite nice about actually having that connection, and we actually just had such a laugh, and we both felt so isolated. I think something happened in terms of, there was some magic that was created because we both felt the same way. And in that one Zoom session, we wrote a whole song, and we couldn't get off Zoom, and it was just like really exciting, and we were both able to escape. So, and then after that, we were kind of day and night, really.
Really?
We didn't really stop. Yeah.
So that was a really important form of connection then, at a time when you could have been really disconnected.
Yeah, it was. And I think I ended up seeing him more than I saw my family or, my boyfriend.
Right.
So it was, it was strange, but there was something, great about it.
And what is the producer's name? Forgive me, I should know that.
Oh, he's called Ghost Culture.
Ghost Culture, right, okay.
Ghost Culture, yeah. He's an artist in his own right. I mean, the interesting thing about it is he's very sort of like left field. His music lives in quite a different space than mine. So I might come from a more, poppy world. But I love experimental music as well. But I think that's what the beauty of it was. We sort of merged our worlds.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's brilliant. I've been a fan of his work for a long time. So.
Nice. With that potential isolation that you could have been feeling without that connection, I guess there could have been a temptation to make music that perhaps wasn't quite as upbeat as the record that you ended up making. Was there something aspirational about the music you were making, about that desire to be able to go outside?
Yeah, I think I had this feeling of, like a lot of people, I felt I remember one day just thinking, I feel like I just want to dance. And I was like, I feel like I'm dancing inside and I've got all this pent up energy. And it was definitely a form of, escapism. And the reason it probably does hold a lot of dance music reference is because I genuinely was dancing around my kitchen, writing these songs, just thinking, I can't wait. I was sort of writing this album to be ready to get out into the real world and connect again.
Yeah.
So it's probably a bit more dancey than my usual go-to.
Right. But lyrically, though, there are some really sort of poignant moments when you think about the title track, The Kick, which is such an upbeat earworm of a song. But some of the lyrics, there's the line, sometimes you need to break down, sometimes you need to lose spirit. Where were you at when you wrote that song?
Well, probably exactly there, probably having a slight breakdown. Like everyone, I still find where the world is at quite strange, and it felt like I was on a roller coaster. So I felt like my emotions were, going from one extreme to the other, and we were like, we're allowed out. No, now we're not. I think that line really is about, you don't feel happiness until you feel sadness. And you won't know what happiness is until you go, really low. So yeah, I think that's just going, sometimes you do need to break down and you need to lose spirit, in order to get back up again and realize, that you have got spirit and you got through it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I was probably crying or something in my kitchen.
Okay.
Dancing, crying.
Was it the act of writing it that helped you find that spirit and helped you get up, or was it just part of the puzzle of getting to that point?
I think for me, music's always that. It's very cathartic. So it always, when I'm writing, there's always something I'm letting go of or I'm releasing. And then I do feel like I can move on afterwards. Not always, but it really helps writing about, what's going on in your feelings and getting them out. Yeah, I think The Kick, I think that might have been the first song. Can't remember now. I think it might have been the second, but it was right at the beginning. So I think I was going through something.
Right. And it's clearly a special song for you to name the album after it. Was there a reason why you chose that as the title track?
Yeah, The Kick really for me is about, it's about a few things. It's about sort of breaking down the walls that are around you, which I guess for a lot of us have been the four walls that we've lived in for 2 years. So in a literal sense, it's about that. But in a more kind of emotional sense, it's about breaking down your own barriers and escaping out of maybe insecurities that you have or fears. It's about like breaking down the fears that surround you and kind of letting yourself be free. And yeah, that's sort of where it is emotionally for me.
Yeah, so there is that big catharsis to it.
Yeah, for sure. Literally kicking the walls.
Yeah. Another song, Forgive Yourself, again, feels like it's written from a place of perhaps high emotion or perhaps intense emotion. Again, looking at the lyrics, walking for days, trying to hold myself in the right way. Again, is it that idea of music really giving you an outlet to express these emotions?
Yeah. Again, I think that's probably from a similar place. I think, well, for me anyway, I think Forgive Yourself is a very important song to me. It's just, it's saying, we're all human, we've all done things, but, we tend to give ourselves the hard time, the hardest time. And I think in that song I say, you wouldn't give someone else this hard of a time, so why are you giving yourself such a hard time? So that's where that song comes from, really. Yeah, and it's, holding yourself in the right way is, I think, something I only learned really when I got into my 30s and I was like, hang on a minute, why am I treating myself so badly? This is ridiculous. I've got to live with myself. It's just me and you.
Yeah.
So we need to make this work. And I think probably lockdown, actually spending a lot of time on your own does make you think, well, if I've just got me, then I probably need to look after myself. So
Yeah. And the album ends on a beautiful note with Too Much Color, which I think I've read you talk about, or read you say that that's about being oversensitive. Is that the case? And are you referring to yourself in that regard, feeling too much?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I remember that song, again, very personal. I guess they all are. But this one, it's about too much colour is essentially too much emotion. And I guess for sort of very empathetic, sensitive types, it's relatable because I think a lot of people actually do struggle with that overwhelming feeling of like, things can be a bit too much sometimes. And we do live in an extremely busy world and, things have evolved so quickly. I think, it's personal. It's definitely how I can sometimes feel in the world. Yeah, it's an emotional one.
Yeah. So, clearly a very emotional album. Do you remember hearing it finished for the first time?
Yeah. Well, I always, when the album's mixed, I'll always go through and, you have to pick the track listing.
Sure.
And you sort of think, God, I've listened to these songs so many times. Have I actually got to like go through it again? So that's almost a very cathartic experience in itself. You're kind of going back through your, the things you went through and you're thinking, oh, wow, okay, that's going to go out into the world. But yeah, I did. I listened through and made the track listing and which I always do on albums because I think it's important to kind of have that ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But I just recently got it on vinyl. And so that's always quite special for me because I'm a big vinyl fan. So
yeah,
I broke down actually, got quite emotional. But yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a very strange feeling, especially hearing it on vinyl. So that was a magical moment.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the album comes off the back of the Friends in the Corner EP from last year. And prior to that, I don't want to say you took time away because you were actually very busy behind the scenes, building a new team and moving to an independent record label. And I think I've read you talk about what you were trying to do was, I guess, get back to the core of who you were, perhaps even when you first signed a deal, when you were 18 and you had your guitar. What were you trying to rediscover or to take back again?
I don't think I knew at the time. I think I just thought, from going from writing music in a bedroom to not worrying about where it lands in the radio, what reaction it really gets. I was just making music to, I sort of didn't mind if one person was listening or 1,000 or, the whole world. I just thought, I love making music. And even if my mum hears it, which at that point it was kind of, things happened so quickly. I think I felt a bit like I lost that kind of innocence that I had around music. I didn't put any pressure on myself and I made music from a very, very personal, like really from the heart, really authentic. I wasn't making it for a record label. I was making it, from, I guess, a different perspective. So it was really just to come out of the major label machine that, sometimes works for some people, but it just really didn't for me. I just felt like I actually felt a bit trapped. So yeah, I think, I was actually with a major for a while. So it was just time, I think. Looking back, I think people are probably like, why did she leave? It was going so well, that kind of thing. But I just had to like step away and just get myself back on the ground, like, get my 2 feet back on the ground and not be chasing something that wasn't really serving me. It might have been serving, the record label or everyone else, and it might have looked like everything was fine from the outside, but it wasn't really. And I think I just reached a bit of a burnout. But no, I was working on myself and was working on finding a team and getting back to the reason behind why I made music, I think.
Yeah. Was it scary at the time? As you said, things were going very well and there's that perception of you're on a major label and things are going really well. Was it scary, even though you knew that wasn't right, to still step away?
Yeah, it was. And I think the scariest thing was talking about it. Because I think there's always perception, because it's like, you know, lots of people in the music industry tend to sort of talk, and you're kind of like, I guess there was a lot of like, oh, are people going to, you know, think that I got dropped or something like that, or like something bad happened, or, you know, there's that like curse that can kind of come over you. But I didn't really, I got over that very quickly. I was scared, but I think it was that thing of like, I had to just jump off and hopefully I would find my, you know, hopefully I wouldn't hit the ground and I'd find, lost my train of thought. Safety net. I think I was just like, right, I'll jump off this building and I'll find the safety net will get me and it'll be fine.
Right.
And it did, but yeah, you know, it took the time it did. And then, you know, I'm releasing music again. So something worked.
Can you hear it in the music? Can you hear that sense of self that you were trying to recapture?
Yeah, definitely. I've let go of a lot of the pressure of writing things. I mean, I never want to write things that are throwaway, and I always want them to feel like they've got a real core meaning. So I think that was my worry. I think I was like, if I stay here, I'm going to start maybe not writing from the heart. So you can definitely hear it. I think, especially in the EP, I started writing things about maybe things that were a bit more challenging and things that were, you know, very intense to maybe write about, that wouldn't have been given, you know, the time of day by a major or something. I don't know, you know, it wouldn't be seen as a massive pop song. So yeah, there was a freedom of lyrically being able to explore new avenues, which I loved. Yeah, right. I love.
And there must also be a sense of freedom of, you mentioned taking that pressure off yourself to be the biggest pop star in the world.
Yeah.
That must be incredibly freeing to remove that from yourself. Had you dealt with that for a long time?
Yeah, I think I didn't put it in my head, but for some reason, being in that environment for so long, yeah, you do. Things start to creep into your head and you start comparing yourself and you're like, hang on a minute, is there something wrong with me? Maybe, you know, and you start looking at your kind of people that are in your lane, but I guess I wasn't in the right lane. So I was comparing myself to people that, you know, I actually wasn't really like, or that wasn't how I wanted my career to go. So yeah, so there was a lot of freedom in that. I mean, we all compare though. There's still always going to be that in life.
Yeah.
But I think once you realise that, you know, why you're doing it, and once you retrain yourself into what success is for yourself, for you, then I think, you know, there's a lot of freedom that comes with that. So yeah, it's a better way of seeing things.
Yeah. What is success to you?
Well, I think writing music that is real to me and having, you know, a loyal fan base. And it's also about the quality of music. It's not the amount of times it's played. It's about the quality. So that's success. If I'm happy with a song and it feels, you know, completely authentically real and you know, I've worked really hard on it and people are listening, that's success, I think.
So I wanted to take you back all the way prior to that, to growing up in Southampton with your mum and your sister. And I understand that you were almost a born entertainer. You from a very early age, you loved entertaining, and at Christmas lunches would be the one getting up on the table and singing or entertaining the people who were there. Is that correct? And did you have that gene from early on?
Yeah, it is correct, embarrassingly.
That's not embarrassing.
No, I think that it's really interesting though, because when people say that to me, I think as a child, I was like that. I was a lot more, I think I thought I was Annie, you know, in the musical.
Right.
I'd be like, I'd run around the house and I'd be singing Tomorrow. And then I discovered like Nina Simone, and I'd discover like all these incredible musicians and singers. And yeah, I would make my family, I actually made tickets, fake tickets, and I'd make my family, I'd queue them all up. And I'd say, right, come in the front room. I'm putting on a show. And it'd just be like this sort of one woman show, one little girl show. Yeah, incredibly embarrassing. But they could all see, my mum could definitely see that I loved music and I loved singing, and you couldn't escape it. I don't think anyone could escape it. They couldn't escape it. So I was like that as a child. Yeah. I'm not, it's funny though, because I'm not so much now. But yeah, I think I thought I was a musical theatre star.
Right. Where do you think you got it from, even to know, to make tickets, to make people queue up, that idea of being a show person?
Yeah. Well, my dad was a musician, but I didn't really know him that well. So I think it was definitely in my genes. But I think also my grandma, she was an English teacher, and to this day she keeps her house is full of books, and she's a very theatrical person. She also taught drama as well. And so I would go to hers, and she had this like little tape recorder, I remember, and it was like, one of those really old school, sort of like, and then you have to take the tape out and roll it back. Yeah. And I used to sit in her living room and I would make a radio show, and I'd be like, hi, you're tuning in to da 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 da. And then I'd sing the song. I'd be like, and this is, and then I'd sing the song. And if that's not someone that, I don't, that's slightly insane, but yeah, so I did that. So I think she encouraged a lot of my performance energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old were you, do you think, when you were doing that?
Gosh, I think I was like 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have been about 5.
Right. And then you mentioned Nina Simone, though. When does Nina Simone come into your orbit?
Well, my sister and my mum, they had very great music taste. There would be Nina Simone playing. My mum had this vinyl that was soundtrack to my whole house growing up. And I just sort of remember being a kid and hearing these sort of magical sounds of Bjork. I remember Venus is a Boy, just like, the sounds just going up the stairs. So they had great taste, and they kind of soundtracked my childhood. So yeah, Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin, all sorts of brilliant musicians, Bob Dylan, Fleetwood Mac, a lot of music that luckily I was listening to.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. And I believe Cyndi Lauper and the Spice Girls were also quite important to you.
Yeah.
Was that when you started discovering music by yourself, or was that also in your mother and your sister's collection?
Yeah, that was definitely me. Cyndi Lauper and the Spice Girls definitely held a big place in my heart. Yeah, I mean, even Eminem, I think when I started discovering music, I think a lot of kids my age, actually, Spice Girls and Eminem are quite big in, of that time. I had a lot of love for Eminem, maybe too much. I had a diary full of all of his lyrics, and I had this like teenage angst, and I think even before I was a teenager, but yeah. But yeah, no, the Spice Girls were big up there. Cyndi Lauper was incredible for me, and Eminem as well, I think. Yeah.
Did you ever get the chance to see Eminem or the Spice Girls or Cyndi play?
Oh, you know what? I did see the Spice Girls. I haven't seen Eminem, which is a travesty. I don't know why I've let that happen.
Right.
Would have loved to have seen Cyndi Lauper. That's probably, yeah. But no, I've seen the Spice Girls. Yeah, I've met a Spice Girl as well. I remember that, and I was
Who is that?
Completely freaked out. Mel C. And I ended up doing a TV show with her, and I think we were dressed up as something really odd, and she was in I think she was in a mouse costume, and I was in a fox costume.
Right.
And I remember trying to explain to her that I loved her, and I was dressed as a fox. Weird.
What a crazy moment, though, to grow up loving Mel C and the Spice Girls, and then to find yourself next to her in a fox costume some years later.
I mean, it's the kind of thing I get remembered. It sparks back, and I'm like, oh, that happened. Yeah, it did.
We have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because we'll be back shortly with more from Foxes. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Foxes. Were film soundtracks also quite influential growing up?
Yeah, completely. that might be where I sort of got my sort of darkness within. Oddly, maybe I loved a lot of 70s horror soundtrack. This is strange, but I fell in love with things like Suspiria and Dario Argentino, who's a great director. And there was something I was drawn to sonically about the music behind horrors, and, you know, how they kind of, the different, you know, I mean, in soundtrack in general, I love because it tells a story without any lyrics. And that's, for me, I don't know what it was. It just it made me have this feeling of feeling kind of a bit scared, and I liked that. Right. I don't know why, but yeah. So I loved 70s horror soundtrack, and then all sorts of soundtrack. I love film scorers, and Hans Zimmer, obviously great. Ennio Morricone. Yeah, there's a million of sound scorers that I loved and do love. So yeah, so soundtrack's been. I love film, sure. So I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah. So when you start making music, even when it's just you in your bedroom, are all these different influences that you just mentioned, are they all kind of somehow swirling around and guiding you in terms of what's coming out of you?
Yeah, I think they definitely are. It will usually be something as well, though, that's like personal, that's going on or happening. But then, yeah, of course, all of those influences are there because that's kind of the building blocks of music for me. So, yeah, they are all swirling around in my head. Nina Simone and all of the, Fleetwood Mac and soundtrack and Eminem. So, yeah.
And so when did you start? When did you perform live for the first time? When was your first public performance?
Well, this is what's interesting. So I didn't sing. I went to secondary school, and so I was a very lively, I loved performing as a child. But then I got to secondary school and I actually just it's like I forgot about music, and I would actually just go home and write to myself. So I was very late in terms of performing. What happened was I left secondary school, and I probably hadn't sung in public for even to my family. I became very introvert for 5 years. And then I was leaving secondary school, and I was going to go and do a beauty course because all of my friends were doing it. And my sister, who had moved to London, she got on the phone to me and she said, what are you doing? She's like, do you not remember? Because she'd been away for about 5 years. So in that 5 years, I forgot that I love performing and love music. And she said, you've got to come to London and go to music school. At that point, I kind of thought about it. And then my mum saw this ad in the paper, and it was for it's like an award ceremony in Southampton. And there was I don't know, I think it was called the Concord Club or something, but it was a talent show. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no way, I am not doing that. And she was like, yes, you are, or I'm not paying. She was gonna help me up to London, and she was like, yes, you are, or you're not going to London. So right. I think it was like, you're either doing this or, you're staying in Southampton. So I remember I did it. And I don't think I hadn't ever performed, and I had just me, my guitar, and I think I did like a Bob Dylan cover or something. And I don't even think I got to the second round. I think I was out in the first round.
Right.
I was out. Yeah, I remember I was out. And there was a guy that came, the head of the thing, came up to me afterwards and said, you're really good. You should have won it. And I was thinking, he just feels really sorry for me. I just shouldn't. Yeah. So yeah, but I ended up going to London.
Right. So you still had, even though that hadn't gone particularly well, you still had the courage to go to London and to keep trying. So did you have an ambition at this point that, maybe music, because you had the belief of your sister, the belief of your mother, were you starting to believe in yourself that you could do music?
I don't think I was. No, I think I knew I loved it. I loved writing, and luckily, I was guided by my sister and my mum. But I think I was still very unsure, and I probably had a lot of I'd only performed once, so I don't think I didn't go in all guns blazing, like, oh, I'm amazing, it's going to be great. I was very shy. So that, that all came very late. But no, something took me there. I definitely had something that I knew I wanted to do. I didn't know if it was going to be anything or do anything. So,
And is that when you start doing open mic nights in London? Was that the way of getting out and performing?
Yeah, I started doing open mic nights, which I actually loved.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved getting on stage and having to win over a crowd that were like, you know, not there for you or just drinking. And I liked the challenge. Yeah, I did that for a long time. And that's really where I got I got confidence there, because it's sort of like being thrown in the deep end. So yeah, I learned rejection there as well.
Right.
Lots of things.
In what way? In terms of people just not listening?
Oh yeah. And then I think, God, there were some weird things that happened. I think there was, just people would just get drunk. And then I think someone threw ice from their drink once at the stage or something silly like that.
Right.
But yeah, you'd just be like, oh, it's fine. It's what it is.
Yeah. That's a real sink or swim kind of moment, right? That's how you earn your stripes as a performer.
Yeah, I think so.
Were you performing all original material at this point?
Yeah, I was performing. I'd started writing, like I said, when I was a lot younger. And I had some songs. They were, I don't think they were good, but they were very innocent. I had a song called Like Foxes Do. So it's about foxes mating for life, and that they only have one partner. Don't know where my head was at that point, but yeah.
Is that the song where the moniker Foxes came from, or was it from a dream that your mum had about foxes?
It's from both, because obviously I think I was 16 when I wrote that song. No, I think I might have been younger. I was a lot younger. It's like 14. But I remember, so I had that song. So Foxes was kind of already, for some reason, in my mind. And then my mum, the whole dream thing is completely true. That happened. Because at the time I was called Louis Rose and Lily. No, sorry. I was called Louisa Rose Allen. Obviously, that's my name.
Right.
And then Lily Allen. I was coming across quite a few like kind of bridges where people would be like, oh, but Lily Allen exists, so you're going to have to change your name. And I didn't really want my name. It felt a bit too exposing to have my name. And I think I remember thinking I wanted the music to speak, the music to have its own name in a way. So Foxes is kind of like what I call my music. And so I just had it in my head. And I called my mum, I think, one day, and I said, oh, thinking of a new name. What do you think of the name Foxes? And she just went really quiet, and she was like, that's really odd. And I said, okay, what's going on? And she said, well, I had this dream last night of foxes running up our old street, and they were howling and making all these beautiful noises that reminded me of your music. And she said, I woke up thinking of it and that it reminded me of your music.
Wow.
And I thought my first thought was, foxes, for one, sound terrible when they're howling. So she must think, I was like, did they sound good? Anyway, but she had, in the dream, apparently they sounded good. So yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of quite humble origins doing the open mic nights in London, but things progress, and the Neon Gold record label puts out the Youth single. Is that the starting point of things starting to some momentum starting to happen to your career? Yeah,
I put out Youth, Home, and White Coats. I put Youth and Home. I put 2 songs on SoundCloud.
Right.
And then Gossip Girl in the US, the TV show. I don't know how this happened. To this day, I'm not sure how. But one of the people that did the sync for Gossip Girl, they ended up hearing it, and I'm not sure how. because I don't think I had many views at all at that point. I think it was like I was on like 20 views or something. And they ended up playing it at the end of the season finale of Gossip Girl. And that was really where it kind of, I remember like it aired, and the next day I went on Twitter or something, and I was like, whoa. It was just a very sort of quick overnight response to the music. And I was just baffled because it was just at that point, just completely me and the music and SoundCloud. And I was like, how has this gone there?
Right.
Yeah. So that was strange, but amazing. And then Neon Gold got involved.
Gold got involved. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And they were brilliant. I love Neon Gold. And I guess they sort of swept me up. And then next thing I knew, I had a little EP of Youth and Home. And I think White Coats was on it. And that was all very surreal for me. It was mad.
And then my chronology is probably out here. But again, things start happening quickly here. You get people like Fall Out Boy, Katy Perry, obviously Zed, hearing your music and publicly loving it. What's going on in your head when you start hearing things like that?
Oh, it was weird. It was really strange. Well, Zed came first. Sure. So Zed ended up hearing the 2 songs that I had on SoundCloud. Again, I think someone in his office played it and then sent it to him, and he was looking for a feature, and he'd been looking for a long time, I think. And we Skyped, and it was, again, it's funny that we Skyped, and, it's like times are now. And we ended up doing Clarity. So I think it was like Clarity, Fall Out Boy, right, like really, really, in a very short space of time. And, Fall Out Boy was mad because I loved Fall Out Boy. And that was, I think I was fangirling.
Okay.
Quite a lot through that time.
Right.
So that was crazy.
Was that the Save Rock and Roll album that you were involved with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just One Yesterday,
right,
which is the track that I'm on. But yeah, I shot a music video with them, and this is actually really funny because I couldn't drive, and I'm driving in the Clarity video somehow. they're like, right, we're just going to put you in a car and you're going to drive. And I was like, well, I can't drive. Fine. And then again, they decided to put me in a car and with the Fall Out Boy video, and I was driving them in a truck up like Grand Canyon. And I was like, in both videos, I'm driving and I can't even drive. So it was strange.
How many years prior to Zed coming on board, for example, were you on your sister's couch?
Oh, well, 3 years? About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to music school and I just stayed on my sister's couch and worked in a bar in East London. Yeah. So
3 years later, the things are taking off. So Clarity, you do Clarity with Zed. Obviously, it goes crazy. What's life like in that whirlwind? Because presumably now there are outside voices, there are outside pressures, there's that idea of actually being a hit. What does that do to your headspace, to your mental headspace?
Yeah, it's wild. I think if I can pinpoint it, I remember Clarity was insane. It was such a mad time. I had no idea what it was doing, really, because in the UK, I was just here, and then in America, it was blowing up. So the only time I realised what it was doing was when I went over for the Grammys. Of course, and the fact that it was up for a Grammy was mad. So I didn't really know. And then I got to America, and I just remember walking through a market, this vintage market. And I remember Clarity was on the radio in one market, and then I went forward a bit. It was on another radio, and then it wasn't the same station playing. Just like, but then I everywhere I went, I'd go in, I'd get in the car, and it would be on the radio, and then it was just my voice following me, and I was thinking, okay, this is big. Yeah. This is doing something. And that was crazy. So this is before as well. This is before I had an album out myself.
Yeah.
So it was quite a strange time because I'd been signed. Then I got signed by a major label, and there were like some real conversations because I remember being in, a big major label office in America, and basically, they were just going, "We need 12 clarities," and I was like, "No, that's not what I signed up for."
Yeah.
Seriously, I remember playing my music and them being like, "Oh, well, this isn't going to work. This doesn't sound like, we really need to just be looking at this." And I thought, hold on a minute, I'm so early on in my career. This is not, this does not feel right.
Right.
And I remember going across the street with my manager, and we sat down and we like had a drink. And I think we both just went, no. Because I think there was a real turning point of like, I could have gone, okay, get me in the room with like whoever and let's just sell me out. But we didn't. And I said, no way, I'm sticking to my album, and that's that.
I mean, that sounds like a very simple conversation, but I can't imagine it was having to go back to the major, like Sony, I guess at that time, and say, no. Yeah.
Well, I was with someone different in America, so it wasn't, that was a different chat. But it was hard because you're like, oh, these people, know what they're talking about. But it was also like not, because I had an album ready to go. So I signed with an album. So it was like, there weren't many changes that were made on the first album. It was like they signed me for that album and I went with them. And so it wasn't that hard because I would have had to throw away that body of work and I just didn't want to.
Right.
So luckily it worked out though, and they did stand by me, I guess. For that.
Yeah. So they signed you with that album, but then turned around and said, we want 12 clarities.
Well, there was a conversation that happened in America. Yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't like, and that was what was said. But I think those conversations, after winning a Grammy, you would, if you were a businessman in a major label, you would have that conversation.
Sure. You spoke earlier about the support of your mum and your sister. Were they also supportive during this period when you're trying to navigate this major label world and this rush of success? Were they people that you confided in, or was there someone else that proved to be a bit of a mentor and had experience that could guide you?
Well, I think they definitely were. The thing is, they didn't know much about the music industry, and I don't think many people do until you get into it. So I had to listen to my intuition a lot. I think that was actually something that guided me, and that kept me strong. And then other people in the music industry were helpful, peers were helpful that, I would meet that had been through similar things. So there were a few people that gave me good advice. So I think other peers were good for that. And then just listening to my gut, I guess.
Yeah. Can you remember any of that advice? Does any of it still resonate with you?
Things like stick it to the man and stuff like that. Like
right.
Just, people that had been in the music industry cycle.
Sure.
And then, I think just keeping your feet on the ground is a massive one.
Sure.
Because you can just get taken a bit away, and, it's not really reality that the music industry, and it's a very, it's wild.
Sure.
But,
And then you hit the road with Pharrell in 2014. Yeah. What was that experience like?
That was incredible. Amazing. I think just the energy of that tour, actually. He had the most incredible crew. He had these extremely talented dancers that were touring with him. And I became they were all women, and they were just the most incredible, beautiful humans ever. And I got really close with them. So I ended up having like 12 best girlfriends on tour with me. So that was lovely and very supportive. And I would sort of go up on stage, and towards the end of my set, they would all run on the stage and start dancing, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah, and then Pharrell was amazing as well. That was insane because I had... that came about because I'd done a cover of Happy on Radio 1 Live Lounge, and he'd heard it. And then I ended up going on tour. And again, insane, you know, Pharrell's an icon and someone I'd looked up to and do look up to. So just to be anywhere near that environment was incredible.
Yeah. And what are you learning about playing live in those sorts of settings on a tour like that? Is it a steep learning curve?
Yes, totally. I think I learnt loads because I think it's very different when you're playing to... I mean, let's look at that. It's mad. I went from playing to people that were throwing ice at me in an open mic night to, you know, gaining some fans and sort of playing to my own fans, which was insane. I couldn't believe it. And then playing these arenas with 50,000, you know, people, and it's Pharrell, and you're going on stage before Pharrell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was mad. I had to really find some real confidence there, but I loved it. Really grateful for that experience.
Yeah. Robert, just a few more things before we finish up. I also wanted to ask you just quickly about the Coldplay tour that you did for was it a Sky Full of Dreams? Is that the
yeah.
name? Right. Is it true you actually went to school with Will, the drummer from Coldplay, Will Champion, or he was at your school?
He went to my school. Okay. Yeah, I didn't go to school with him, no.
Right.
But he went to my school, oddly. So that was funny because we spoke a lot about Southampton and him growing up there, and he's so nice. Yeah, they're all lovely, actually.
Yeah.
That was probably just, that was an amazing experience. And they're all just the kindest, nicest people. But no, I didn't go to school with him. We went to the same school. Yeah.
Right. How was he? Was he famous while you were at school? Had Coldplay ascended by that point?
I'd have to look at dates. I don't think that he was.
Okay.
No, he wasn't. No.
Fair enough. Just before we finish up, Louisa, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Yeah, many people. I think when I think about that, I think about the people that listen to my music, because that's fully what's kept me going and kept me writing. People that have been there from day one and still continue to listen and, you know, allow me to have that time off that I had and are still there. So they hold a extremely special place in my heart. And my grandma as well. She's always been the oracle of my family, and she's a great source of inspiration for me. Yeah, and then I think it's really nice now because I have such a lovely team, and it's really nice to feel supported and have such great creative minds around me. Or there's lots of people I would give credit to.
Sure.
People at the beginning that really believed in me, probably the biggest one.
Nice one. That's great. Thank you so much, Louise. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. That went so quick.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Foxes for her time, and thank you for listening. Just a reminder that Fox's latest album, The Kick, is out now. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.